not necessarily boring when that's what. And he's all kind of, how are you always so like optimistic and positive? I got boring stuff I do all the time.
Yeah.
Now he listens to Pastor Dave or Josh, whoever's preaching. He listens to it almost weekly. And he's kind of, so that's cool. Little baby steps.
Yeah. Sure is. Sure is.
All right, you guys. Feel free to keep eating, keep chowing on some chips and queso if you want some. Get another drink. If you need to go use the restroom, I'm pretty sure all of you know where it's probably at. If you don't, it's just down this hallway just to the left. Nobody's a prisoner, so don't feel like you have to stick around if you have to go to the bathroom or something. But I thought we would just jump into this group coach guide that I have put together with a little bit of help from Pastor Doug. He actually put some of this content together before I took over this ministry, and so I need to give him credit, and I've taken it and kind of adapted it to what we're doing and where we're going. But so really what I want to do is just as a group is talk through as much of this as we can. Once again, just recognizing the commitment and the investment that you guys are making in group leaders. I can tell you from personal experience and throughout the content of this book that we're going to go through today, you'll hear different illustrations, but what I'm learning more and more is that where I find a lot of satisfaction and joy is in reproducing myself. It's not always in the big numbers, like it's exciting to be a part of a church as large as Crossroads is. Like, I love it. I love the energy that comes from it. But what really gets me really excited is when I start thinking about the ways that I'm, even in the moment, not even realizing it, but kind of in hindsight, recognizing like where I've poured into someone and how I've reproduced myself as a minister. And what you guys are doing is really being a part of a replication process. And so it's a big deal. Like it's important work, and I know it's a little bit seasonal, and sometimes you're not quite sure where you're bringing value, but sometimes you don't know where the value comes in until after years and years of doing youth ministry. A lot of youth ministry is almost fruitless work in the moment, because you don't usually have kids coming to you saying, "Man, Chris, that was the greatest lesson I've ever heard." Usually it's like, Chris, I don't know. All I have is all of these memories in my head right now of all of these conversations where I had to light into students because they were doing stupid stuff. But so it was in some ways, very fruitless work in the moment. But as you have hindsight and you see people develop, it's really rewarding to be able to say, you know what? God did the work. God did something in that individual's life, but in some way, somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he used me to be a part of it. And whatever part I played, I can take joy in knowing that I did what my Savior has called me to do, and that's reproduce and make disciples. And so what you guys are doing as coaches is in a form, it's making disciples. Like, that's what we're doing. We're pouring into people, and we're serving them, we're loving them, we're investing ourselves in them, and that's what we are called to do. And so that's a long way of saying thanks for what you guys do. What I want to do real quick before we do get into the content is ask another question, just to get us thinking about communities. And why you're doing what you're doing, like why you said yes to an invite, whether it was from Doug and then I kind of reiterated it when I came in, or whether it was from me, or whether you were dumb enough to actually volunteer for it, like Josh. Josh actually came up to me yesterday and he's like, "Hey man, what do you think about me being one of the group coaches?" I'm like, "Yes, you'll fit well in our team." My guess is there's a purpose behind why you said yes to this ministry, and it's because you believe in communities. It's because you believe in small groups. And so I was going to ask you guys to share one just like brief story, brief example of why you believe in communities. And when I say brief, I'm talking like 30 seconds or less. Maybe it's something that you were taught. Maybe
Because
it's
the Bible tells me so.
3
seconds?
Yeah. Say it 10 times.
Mine is because it kick-started me. I went to Crossroads for over 20 years, been a Christian for a long time, and felt like I lived it. And I did in a personal relationship with the Lord, but community groups, being with Josh, Kevin, the first group I got in, it really, it just really was like the trigger to say, okay, this is what you almost helped find a purpose in my life of where my heart's been, and it kind of reassured that, yeah, this is where you need to be, and now you need to take it and run with it, for sure. And knowing that can do that in other people's lives is great.
I guess mine would be primarily, of course, the groups, and you build the large church into a smaller group. But a lot of it is just the theological teaching, and some of that can go awry with different leaders.
Yeah.
And I guess building into those other leaders, what is theologically correct and what does the Bible say? Because it is so important to have that good foundation and that basis to work off to even be a leader.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to put that into 60 or 80 different people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make sure all those 60 or 80 different people are teaching what is theologically correct.
Right.
So I guess more so of that, because I heard some stories before I became a coach and even a leader of how people didn't do that.
Yeah.
And they're just like, this content isn't what, fully what I believe, and tossing some of the content aside.
Yeah.
And it would probably be that. Probably how do, like you said, replicate yourself, but only in a theological, true way to the Bible, I guess. So, yeah.
Good. Very good. And obviously the way we're formatted as a church with our communities ministry here, we have a lot of outside teaching coming in. And so you kind of open yourself up to, as a church, like, do our leaders, are they able to identify what is false teaching, what is some dangerous territory, what they need to stay away from? And we obviously try to filter as much of that as we can by asking group leaders, like, hey, what curriculum are you teaching through? And if you're teaching through your own curriculum, can we see it? So we try to head that off and stay out in front of it, but obviously we can't be out in front of everything. Like I know not Beth Moore, it's Priscilla Shire is coming out with a new study on Elijah, and one of our ladies is going to lead a study through it. And she's usually pretty solid, but it's like I haven't had my hands on that curriculum, so I really don't know. So when we have group coaches, or we have group leaders, let's say, that have solid theology, a lot of that comes from their own time in the Word. It comes from the preaching from the pulpit, but it comes from group coaches as well, answering questions and giving direction and insight into Scripture. That just means that not only are our group leaders more grounded in their theology and their doctrine, but what they're teaching our people is obviously more trustworthy. And so, we haven't had a lot of opportunities yet to get into that, have we?
No.
And so we'll have to figure that out as we go. Like, how does that look? And especially since each of you have different bents, like each of you have different passions that make you a good group leader. What I got to do as the leader of the team, I guess, is to try to figure out how can I serve you as you serve people? Like, how can I best employ you? Some of you might be like, man, I just want to pray with people, and I just want to listen to them, and I just want to have conversations. I had, like Vanessa's a really good example. Vanessa Alcantara, who's one of our coaches, she came to me about 6 months ago and said, I don't think I can continue as a coach as it looks traditionally, like what you guys are doing. She's like, but I'd love to keep doing like training and vision casting and that kind of thing. And so kind of found a different role for her that will be much more seasonal and less like, weekly reaching out to individuals, because she's just so busy with her kids and stuff. And so my job is to learn the hearts of you guys and all of our coaches for that matter, and just say what fires them up and how can I help them to find purpose and the ways that they get enthusiastic about. So, so it's good to know. Like we have to figure out ways. Like how can we not only train up group leaders, but how can we make sure and ensure that they're theologically sound, and or they can at least identify like bad theology or false teachings.
Yeah.
And so obviously most of our group leaders are never going to become theologians, but at least they could read curriculum or something or watch a video and say, yeah, I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah.
That's where we need to get. So good, very good. Who else?
Well, there's much diversity in our liberty and freedom in our community, in our country. And community is where there's unity. So we have to be united in the essentials and have liberty in the non-essentials, which is the diversity. So I think that's what really attracted me to the idea. It's like I coached Little League for all those years, and then I went from being a Little League coach for my boys all the way up till they got too many skills that are way above my head. Start throwing curveballs, like I love teaching. So it was time for me to do something different. So this kind of fit right in. Like I hung that up as they transitioned to being coached by the experts. And I was like, now what am I going to do? And then you called me this, and I said, I'm not qualified. You said, well, let's talk about it. And I really didn't think I was. But the more I thought about it, I said, I think I want to do this because I truly believe in communities. I think we come here and we get plays. Just to give the football analogy, since we've watched a lot of football lately, we come here to get plays. I'm sorry, I won't go over your 30-second quota, but we come here and get plays, and then we have to go run it in the community.
Yeah.
You know, like I come and get plays from whoever's preaching, whether it be you or Josh or even Dave, and I go try to run those plays. And us coaches need to make sure that we're coaching well, because we have people that we're discipling.
Yeah.
At both, whether my work at my hand clinic, I have a couple young people that I'm kind of mentoring a little bit, and you just mentioned that too. And I got to coach them along too, and I get my unity here to be able to share that in the community to help unite our thinking, so we can connect our mind to our hearts, we can connect our soul to our body, and I do believe there's an order to that.
Yeah.
And that orderly thinking, that good anger helps order things. That unity is in community, and this is very critical what you're doing, Chris. I truly believe it's very critical that this church has tasked you to not only put the growth track together, which I think we need to continue to improve that and tweak that and make that so great that people feel like they need to be united in their thinking throughout that growth track. And what you're doing, I truly believe in, or I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah.
I mean, I truly believe in the unity that you're leading. Because it's not the people who just come to this church, it's what we're doing in our workplace. I have a young man yesterday getting ready to get a job with Brother Care. And this young man's got tattoos all over his arm. He's trying to pass his drug test. It says God, and he has Proverbs quote here, but he's just kind of lost. He loves his freedom and getting the tattoos. He goes, but these aren't really who I'm really in Christ, and I'm trying to get clean so I can pass my drug test to get hired from. And just mentoring him, being patient while I'm trying to get his hands working better. It's so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what an opportunity to do that. And I'm just running plays with him.
That's good.
In my clinic that I learned here from you.
Right.
And I've really just tested what I'm reading in the Bible here a lot.
Yeah.
What does it work out? So I truly believe in what you do. That's why I'm sitting.
Yeah.
I truly believe we're here to transform lives.
That's awesome. I'm inspired, man. There's unity and community. Actually, I think I'm gonna get a pen and write that down. So I know what to get it myself. Like that may show up somewhere on like a Facebook post or something.
Tim's face on it.
Yeah.
Chris's face.
No, your face on it.
Yeah.
I don't want.
Nobody wants to see my face on social media.
Put that haircut.
Man with the same haircut. for
Yeah.
6 years. There's unity in
Look at his
Yeah.
boring haircut. How about some diversity?
Yeah.
Yeah, look around the room.
Hair.
You're
I know.
the only diverse one in this
Yeah,
room.
I was gonna say, you long-haired hippie.
My sons are growing mullets. Dude. It's
Oh.
hysterical. My 15-year-old has a
Mullet, oh my gosh.
And my older,
I can't believe they're coming back.
Yeah,
They're
isn't
literally
that
coming
something?
He has it short hair and it's long hair. It looks great on a
There's
ball
people that
cap.
make fun of that. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Back in our day.
Fanny packs and mullets,
Really?
man.
Yeah, we're back.
What goes around comes around.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say for me, I mean, a microcosm, of that as the new young adult pastor, and we had young adult community groups before, but there's just been a lot of disunity, this continuity, I suppose, amongst them, and so I just feel like it's my responsibility to, shepherd, young adult groups, which are a lot led by young adults themselves, as a part of that ministry. So I'm like, well, it just makes sense that if I want to unify, these groups that are kind of off in their own no man's land, to be a coach. And I was gonna do it unofficially, and then Chris was like, hey, I got a 2-hour training tomorrow. You should come over.
I said, we're
That's
Chipotle.
official, yeah, that was the clink, that was the cinch right there.
It's like, right, lunch. I'm like, oh, what do we have? And I'm like,
Yeah.
Chipotle. I'm like, I'm there. I'll be there. Let me check my calendar. Yeah, I'm in.
I know how to hook people, man.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
I know how to hook teenagers. You hook teenagers with pizza. You
Yeah.
hook adults with. I almost did Buffalo Wild Wings today, but anyways, well, cool. I appreciate you guys sharing all of your experiences and why you're here in this room. And my hope is that you guys, we're all still learning our way. I mean, the fact is, I've been a small groups pastor for a little over a year now. And I've obviously led small groups for several years, even before that, but I'm still learning my way in some of this. And so I'm doing my best to train you guys. And there's going to be certain things that don't feel comfortable or don't feel natural at first, or maybe isn't covered in a catalog. Like you don't know necessarily how to deal with something. And obviously I want to be a resource to you guys, but I want to do my best to train you and equip you, because I know this: when you're a volunteer, when you step out and you give yourself to something, especially for a men that have careers and have kids and all kinds of commitments, it's a big ask, and it's a big deal that you guys all said yes to an invite. And so the last thing I want to do is waste your time. And that goes for our female coaches as well. I mean, everybody's busy with different things, and so I want to equip you well so that you can do your jobs well, and more than just do jobs well, but do ministry, do it well, and know that you're making a difference. Like, how am I winning in this ministry? Because there's nothing more frustrating than saying, I volunteered for this, or I was asked to do this, but I don't really know if I'm accomplishing what I'm supposed to. I don't really know if I'm winning. And so I want you guys to know, if you're doing this, then we are making, we're making progress, we're gaining ground, we're growing something. And so certainly you're not going to walk away from 15 pages of this and say, okay, now I know this is the end zone, this is what we're shooting for, but certainly I'm going to show you how we can kind of move the ball down the field, so to speak, and you can feel like as we get into a semester, you're a little bit more equipped than maybe you were yesterday. So with that being said, we're just gonna kind of read through this content, and I'll certainly take some spots and break some things down and expand on some things, but I may ask you guys to do some of the reading. So let's just jump into it. So what's the description of a Crossroads group coach? So our Crossroads group coaches are one of the most important keys to the success of our small group ministry. A group coach is a shepherd of shepherds and a leader of leaders. And so just in case you felt like you weren't sure how significant this role is, you are shepherding other shepherds and you are leading other leaders. And so here's a brief description of what a group coach does, and we're going to break it down a little bit further as we go along. But these are some basic bullet points of what we want you guys to be doing on a regular basis throughout the semester and even in between semesters. We want you to be shepherding shepherds. Coaches speak into the lives of small group leaders on a personal level. Just as a small group leader does this with his or her group members, so a coach does this for the leaders in his or her care. It means talking with them about how they're doing spiritually, how the relationships are going, and how they're feeling in their role as a leader. So really, you're coming alongside people that are stepping out saying, I want to be a spiritual leader as a group leader. And you're coming alongside them and saying, how can I support you? How can I pray for you? Where do you need encouragement? What are you frustrated by? Finding them on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night and just chatting with them, really just personally investing in them. We also lead leaders. The goal of a Crossroads group coach is the success of each of their assigned small group leaders. This is accomplished through equipping and encouraging the small group leaders to accomplish the 3 objectives of a small group: transformational teaching, biblical community, and missional living. And so those are some things, like those are the things you might underline or highlight. Like, we want to see transformational teaching in all of our groups, in some form or fashion. Not every group is a theologically based group. We do have some, for example, like we have what is considered a connect group. It's just our softball team that meets in the summer, and it's 15 guys that get together every Monday night or Tuesday night, whatever it is, and play softball. But we consider it a group. It's a way for guys to get connected. We have in the winters, typical winters before COVID, we have a bowling league, and that's another connect group. We have a group of guys that meet up once a week and go bicycling whenever the temperature is above 50 degrees. So those are connect groups. Will there always be like transformational teaching? Not necessarily.
I disagree.
Well, there
I
will.
think it is, and let me tell you why. I'm very passionate about it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. But Dan, I think that's so important those groups are.
Right.
I mean, let me give you a perfect example. I have a son that's very good at golf. He went to state this past year, and I'm not boasting about it, but he's really good, okay? So they had a baseball fundraiser that Ontario teachers did out at Twin Lakes Golf Course,
Right.
okay? So I go out to sign up, pay my $300 and something. These big fundraisers are huge. It's to raise all this money, and I paid for the whole group, my group of 4. I don't know if you've ever been to golf fundraisers. They're big. I've supported a lot of them in the military, with Wounded Warriors and stuff like that. Huge money makers, okay? Ontario baseball team wants this outing, okay?
Right.
And it's all these men getting together from the community, mainly dads and people that love baseball, to go out to Twin Lakes to sign our checks, to give this money. It's a big fundraiser.
Right.
I'm signing up the form, I'm writing my check, and they say, "Excuse me, sir, is that your son over there on the putting green?" I'm like, yeah, we've been playing since this big year. We're supporting the Ontario baseball team. I should have applied. You know, kids aren't allowed here. You know, we don't, usually this golf outing, we don't allow kids here, especially the high school kids. Am I signing up the right desk, I said?
Yeah.
I got in an argument with these
Yeah.
people. They're like, well, no, this is a men's group. We're men raising money for the Ontario baseball team, but they're not allowed because the principal's going to be here soon, the athletic director is going to be here, the baseball director, and we're going to have a few beers.
Mm.
And we don't want them to
Right.
see our principal drinking.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, so is the kids the problem, or do we have an adult problem here? Do we have an adolescent adult problem, or do we have like my kid's a problem and he can't participate in this golf outing? And boy, they got upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
My point is this, is that men don't know how to act. Like I said, I'm gonna go out here, and a couple of them are like, arguing with, they're like, you know what, are we not supposed to have a beer now? Because these guys were saying like real nasty to me, okay? I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have a beer or 2 out there. And my boys are gonna see me drink a beer or 2. But I'm gonna do it responsibly, like a man's supposed to.
Right.
Alcohol doesn't have me, I have an alcoholic beverage.
Right.
The alcoholic beverage doesn't have me. I was like, you guys are the teachers, the leaders in our community, raising our kids, teaching my
Right.
kids, and the principal's here, and this is an athletic director. And this is a group outing. My point is that these men's groups that you have in these outings, this is how you follow Christ. My boys are watching me. This is how you have a golf outing
Yeah.
that supports what they
Yeah.
love as baseball,
Mhm.
and they're not allowed.
Mm.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know that there's a lot of groups in this community that are teaching and leading our children, running our school systems. Like the Ontario,
Yeah.
this is the principal, the athletic director, the Board of Education out there, guys.
Yeah. Well,
And my
no.
point is, and we need to, this is how men can enjoy life
Sure.
together, to enjoy baseball, to enjoy
Yeah, I think
golf.
Chris wasn't saying they don't.
I know they
He
don't,
just
but
said
yeah, no.
typically,
But
typically they're not in that
what
category.
he's implying
Yeah.
is that some people frown on the idea of that being a community group. That's what
Right,
I was
no,
getting.
no, yeah.
Some people do. We don't.
Right.
We don't, and you don't. And I didn't mean to fight
Yeah.
that way. I'm just saying. But I think you're right. I think a lot of people, those aren't as valuable because there's not transformation going on there like there is in like a classroom didactic setting. But that isn't didactic. That's application of the
Yeah.
follower. We're not are we leaders of leaders. We're the followers of the follower. This is how we
Yeah.
follow. So I'm just saying, I think those are so important.
Yeah.
I think they are transformed. I think the boys seeing me, how I behave and
Yeah.
how I handle myself in those type of settings is transformational.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
well, so when we
changing the way that-
put a a
Those are just
softball
as
team
important.
together,
Those are so important.
yeah, when we put those things together, we do value them, and we don't
Absolutely.
honestly we don't have enough of them because
Yeah.
there are a lot of people, whether they're baby Christians or unchurched, that don't have a way to connect with other believers.
Yeah.
And so when we have these opportunities, it is a way to invite those that are looking in and then let them watch us live our lives. That is transformational teaching.
Amen.
But
Amen.
not always in the form of sitting down for a Bible study. But transformational teaching can happen whether it's sitting down and opening your Bible or it's just, hey, you watch me.
Yeah,
do.
it's not
The
a direct.
application.
It's not a direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually employing and
Yeah.
applying it to
Yeah.
real life,
Yeah.
like how we behave and act.
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
visual
Yeah, and
frame.
I think that we all agree here that that
We
is
do.
what we want to be about. We want to offer transformational teaching, and we're all different learners. Some people are visual, some people are kinetic, some people are maybe a little bit more physical or whatever it might be. And so we have to figure out ways to connect with those people on different levels and to teach them. And so just between the the five of us, there's a very good chance that we're going to start up a new type of group. Like right now we have community groups and we have classes and we have connect groups. There's a very good chance that we're going to start up a new type of group that I'm working on here in the next couple of weeks that I'm hoping will turn into something that has a chance to teach transformational life skills, not just life skills, but really spiritual principles in even smaller groups than small groups. And so everybody learns differently. And so you're right. So I appreciate your passion for that.
I do,
But-
you see it. If you just
Yeah.
watch our community and listen, you see where we need
Yeah.
that.
And I just to move on, I have some role descriptions. I think I've handed at least one role description to all of you guys. Maybe Josh, you may not have seen one yet, but I've got a role description. And once again, this will break down a little bit of what is in the role description a little further. But I know how vision is. Vision leaks, right? And so you can hear something 100 times and you might forget it in 2 weeks. And so I gave each of you guys, when you were considering being a group coach, I gave each of you a role description and said this is kind of what we're looking for. And what I wanted to do is just kind of put that in front of you guys again. It's not to pressure you by any means, but once again, just to say this is what we hope to see. And the fact is that whatever's in that one-page document that you're going to see, much of it is in here. And so we're going to walk through some of this, but the role description might just be good for you guys to have somewhere accessible throughout the semester or whatever, just to remind you, like, what do I need to be about? What do I need to be doing? And so I'll get that to you guys hopefully in the next week or so. Let's jump on to page 4, expectations of Crossroads group coach. We want you guys to shepherd. We've already talked a little bit about that, so I don't need to probably break that down any further. We want to grow. I want to see you guys not just grow numerically, but my hope and desire is that as you lead leaders, you're growing spiritually yourself. So a group coach encourages and helps leaders to cultivate the disciplines of Bible study, prayer, and accountability to increase understanding of the Word and a vital relationship with God. A coach consistently and creatively casts vision and instills in the core values of Crossroads Church. Those core values are connected in community, committed to excellence, and called to share. A group's coach commits himself or herself to their own continuous growth in leadership skills by attending group coach sessions and group leader trainings and huddles. So we might have this, once again, I'm still building the framework for this coach's team, but we might have maybe 3 or 4 of these kind of get-togethers a year, maybe. I don't think that most of our training sessions will be maybe this intense going through a guide like this, but we might do something like this once a year, and then maybe 2 or 3 other times a year, we just get together and talk about, like, hey, what are you guys doing? What practices have you started on that we can learn from each other on? So growth is a part of this. Connecting, obviously, is another one. Eric, you want to read the connecting one?
Where is that at? Which one?
The
Through the
third
regular?
one. I think you're a page ahead.
Oh, where am I at here?
No, I'm sorry. You guys don't have the blanks. I apologize.
Okay.
Connect is the third one.
Okay.
So the first one was shepherd, second one's growth, third one's connect.
Yeah.
Start with the second one.
I forgot to highlight the fact
Okay.
that those are blanks
Yeah,
for you guys
yeah,
in my
yeah.
book, and
Yeah.
so.
So connect through regular and various forms of interactions, email, phone calls, meetups, text, etc. A coach invests in their assigned groups to inspire them to grow as group leaders. A coach occasionally visits the group to catch vision, encourage leaders and members, and to provide feedback to leaders. A coach maintains connection with responsiveness to the accountability with the community's pastor.
Yeah, and so really we want you to connect to those that are kind of, I don't want to say beneath you, but those that you are ministering to, and, you know, those that you're maybe ministered to by. So basically, we need to have connection with group leaders, but also connection back to me. Because you guys are really the eyes and the ears for me. I have somewhere in the neighborhood, if you count all of my group leaders from 2020, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 110 group leaders. So there's just no way that I can connect with all of them. And now I'm not going to assign 110 group leaders every semester to you guys, because like this semester, for example, we might have 60 group leaders. And so we're going to focus on them in particular through the semester and in between this semester and the next semester. But man, that connection is so important for our group leaders to feel like, man, they're keeping up with me. And it's not about keeping track. It's really about, does anybody care? Because if you've ever led a group on your own, sometimes you can feel like you're on an island. Sometimes it feels like, man, is anybody, you know, I'm going through this as a leader and I'm not sure how to handle this situation, or that person's question, or that struggle in that marriage of those people that are in my group. I don't really know what to do. Is there anyone that I can go to? And so I would say probably 80 to 90% of our group leaders, they come to our pre-semester group trainings and they're filled up, and we try to give them as much usable like content as we can give them. But once they're out leading their groups through the semester, I'd say about 90% of them are probably feeling like, I don't have a connection with other group leaders. They don't always feel like they're on a team. And so you guys as group coaches, keeping that connection with them will inspire them and help them to understand that they're not alone in this, and that even though they may not be able to go directly to Pastor Dave or maybe even directly to me, they certainly can go to their group coaches, and you guys can serve them in that way. The next bullet point there, number 4, on page 4, is serve. A group's coach aids group leaders in discovering, developing, and employing their spiritual gifts. This is the primary problem solver for issues arising in the groups of leaders he or she oversees. A coach serves by contributing to teachings, challenges, and conversations during the huddles that we will have. And so my plan and my desire throughout the year is to have 3 semester training sessions for our group leaders, but also have 3 other group huddle sessions. Like we had one back in probably, man, I want to say it was probably August, somewhere around there. It was right in the middle of the pandemic, and I had a group leaders huddle, and we just met right out here during the 9 o'clock and the 11 o'clock service in Cubicle City. And you know, I might have had 25 group leaders total between 2 services, but man, we just sat down and talked, and we talked about where they're at in their groups and how they're discouraged and how we could pray for each other. And man, it was really powerful to hear, because I was hearing from group leaders that were like, man, I'm just discouraged, I'm defeated, I'm tired of being isolated, I've got this going on in my family, and I've got this going on in my group, and they just needed a place where they could blah, you know, and they just needed to dump, and it was really good, a good opportunity. And so those will be opportunities that you'll be invited to as coaches as well, just to be a presence and to kind of speak into situations and to help group leaders along. And so just serve in that way. Share is another one. That's the next one on the top of page 5. We want to see group coaches equip group leaders to share their testimony and the gospel message with others. A coach cultivates in group leaders a heart for unbelievers and a heart for growth in groups. And so this is something that will be, man, some of these things are not easily accomplished. You know, like getting people to the point where they're leading their groups and understanding that not only is multiplication and like deep spiritual teaching success, but we also want to equip our leaders to train their people that we're called to go out, you know, like we're called to take our stories, to take our testimonies and share them. And so a lot of our groups, to be honest, most of our group leaders probably aren't, this probably sharing isn't probably on their radar, you know, but we have to, you know, I have to, you know, kind of as the leader, I have to pave the way in that and to remind people like this is what we need to be about. We need to be about, you know, missional living as much as transformational teaching and yeah, biblical living as well. And so sharing is another one. Expand the ministry is another one. Now I say these are expectations. They're probably more like ideals, because I don't expect right out of the gate that you guys are going to be taking on some of these responsibilities. But in an ideal world where a group's coach team is firing on all cylinders and everyone's bought in, these are the things that we're doing. And so expanding the ministry is another thing. So a group coach is committed to expand the ministry by recruiting an apprentice coach, training future coaches, and facilitating the start of new groups. And so you know, for example, I invited Josh onto the team recently. Josh is going to be a group leader for the first time this coming semester, and he's going to take over the group that I started this last semester. And he knows already, like, hey, your goal is to take this group and not to just stay together for 5 years. Your goal is to take this group and build into them and invest into them, but also to grow it, you know, turn one group into two and two groups into four. And that's what we want to see, is casting that vision and that mindset to our group leaders. And I don't expect you guys right now, again, to just go out and start recruiting, get on the recruiting trail, but there might be conversations that you guys will have in a church lobby on a Sunday morning where you have a conversation about leading groups or something, and something just sparks, it catches your attention, and you're like, man, I wonder if they could do what I'm doing. I wonder if they could be a group coach. And so the reason I believe that you guys can play a part in that is because I consider myself one of the coaches, and I've had conversations with each of you at some point that led me to think, you know what? I think Eric would be a good group coach, or I think Josh would be a good group coach, or Ted would be a good group coach. And that led to an invitation. And so all I'm saying as far as like recruitment goes is, I'm not going to tell any of you like, hey, you have to find at least one group coach next year.
Got a
But just
quota, or
like-
else you're fired.
Although
As long as it's commission, I'll be there.
Yeah.
You give me Chipotle?
Yeah.
I'll get your group. I won't promise it'll work out, but we can call them coach. Can't be your kid.
But man, my desire is that you guys are at least sensitive to a ministry that you volunteered to, and how can we build this team? How can we build this ministry? How can we be more effective? Because what you're going to find is I'm going to give you guys some assignments here in the next week, probably, of people. I say assignments, man, that sounds really bad, as if people are just tasks. I'm going to give you people that you are going to minister to. And, you know, because of the size of our group, and this is actually the biggest our group's coach team has been since it's formulated. So there's 6 of us total. 7 of us total, sorry. Man, you're going to find that you might have 10 or 12 people that you're going to follow up with as group leaders, or you as coaches. So my desire is, as this group grows, as our coaches team grows, that obviously you guys can minister more effectively and more intimately with fewer people, fewer group leaders. And so expanding the ministry is something that's already started, but I want to help equip you to keep doing that and be a part of the ownership of growing it. And so certainly if you guys ever have thoughts, or people just come to mind, and you're like, man, I'm not sure I'm ready to have that conversation with this individual, but I think that this should be somebody that should be considered. Certainly you can always bring suggestions to me, because you guys collectively know way more people than I do in this church. And so we all can contribute to that. So let's look at the biblical basis for a Crossroads group coach? Like, where does this come from Scripture? Deuteronomy chapter 1. Josh Coker, do you want to read verses 9 through 12?
Certainly. At that time I said to you, I am not able to bear you by myself. The Lord your God has multiplied you, and behold, you are today as numerous as the stars of heaven. May the Lord, the God of your fathers, make you 1,000 times as many as you are, and bless you, as he has promised you. How can I bear by myself the weight and burden of you and your strife?
Yeah, I think that last question right there in that passage of Scripture where Moses is speaking, how can I bear by myself the weight and the burden of you and your strife? And if you think back on the story of Moses, who was, this deliverer, he was God's, mouthpiece. He was his spokesperson, if you will. He's trying to bear the burden of several 100,000 people, and some scholars even say that there might have been as many as a couple million by the time they got into the promised land. Like, he's trying to bear this burden alone, and his father-in-law comes along and says, Moses, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna get crushed under this weight. And so Moses at some point realizes, how can I bear by myself the weight and the burden of your strife? And so, kind of to circle back what I said a little bit earlier, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm overwhelmed or anything, but the reality is that as a leader, I can only effectively lead so many people. You can look straight to the ministry of Jesus, and he led 12 really well. Probably the best leader that's ever walked on the face of the earth, focused on 12 people. And he did that so well that they went out and changed the world, turned it upside down. And so if I'm here as the community's pastor trying to lead 100 different small group leaders, there's just no way I can do it effectively. And so you guys, by way of what you're doing in your investment, you're bearing the burdens, not only for this church, but for our people and certainly for your groups, Pastor. And so it's a really valuable responsibility, and it blesses me tremendously. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 13 through 15, a little bit further on. Josh, you want to read that? Josh?
Sure. Yeah. Choose for your tribes wise, understanding, and experienced men, and I will appoint them as your heads. And you answered me, the thing that you have spoken is good for us to do. So I took the heads of your tribes, wise and experienced men, and set them as heads over you. Commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds, commanders of 50s, commanders of 10s, and officers throughout your tribes.
Yeah. And then Exodus 18 says, you and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. And so, man, this is just a leadership principle for anybody in any ministry, in any leadership position, whether it's within the church or in the workplace. Man, you just can't do it alone. And so, and our group leaders can't do it alone. They need support, and they need places to turn to when they have questions and need assistance. And so there's the biblical, defense for why we have group coaches if the practical reason isn't quite enough. So let's turn to page 6.
Have you seen that picture? Everything you're saying makes me think of that, like all the fish.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
It just made it I keep that picture on my phone on purpose because it makes me think of
Well, it's like thousands
when we're
and thousands
together.
of fish.
Oh dang, we can take out the. We work well together. I just keep on my focus is always like you can't do it by yourself.
That's great. So let's turn to the role of Crossroads group coaches. So we talked about a little bit the expectations. Now we want to talk about the role. So we're probably getting a little bit more practical here. But the question there at the top of that page, and I thought we'd just take a couple of minutes to break the monotony of me speaking through all this, but what are some responsibilities that a group coach might have in relation to the players he leads?
So you're talking about just a coach in general, like a football coach?
Yeah, sorry, I said group coach, just
Okay,
a coach. Yeah.
Coach in general. Obviously helping them develop and hone their own skills and individual skills. Take football, if it's the receivers or the linemen or the quarterback, they've all got skill sets that need to be honed in on, and so that coach is what, through his team of coaches is ultimately responsible for helping them develop in their skills.
Yeah, give them good fundamentals. I mean, at every sport, everything that you lead people in, there's fundamentals. And even professional athletes and people that do that well, most of them, it's a common denominator. They revert back at some point to the fundamentals to win the ultimate goal. So I think leading by example and making a clear path of how to get there is, and knowing when to step in and correct them when they're doing it wrong and getting
Yeah.
back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think as Josh just said is just
Which one?
That's gonna get confusing. I think just building upon each other's skills to form a team with a purpose in mind, with a one purpose in mind, rather than you got this skill, you got this skill, you got this skill, but you have to kind of hone it down into a purpose driven.
Yeah.
So,
It's gonna inspire a shared vision, no matter whether you're
Yeah.
the quarterback, wide receiver, whatever. We have this one
yeah.
vision goal that we're going towards.
I think another one is like identifying potential. A lot of times kids that are on sports teams don't realize, because all they see is how bad they are right now, they don't realize how good they could be. You know, I have two girls that, just me being blunt honest, if I can, they kind of suck at basketball. but they both play. I love watching them play, don't get me wrong. But they're just not that good of players. But I see potential in them that they don't even see in themselves. Like
He
they,
doesn't out shooting 300
Yeah.
corners a night.
Yeah.
Over 300
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
matter.
yeah,
That's key.
It-
That's key. It's not until I realized I was disabled that I become able.
Mhm.
That's so important to see that. It's this disabled soldiers that I cared for in the military at the Army Burn and Trauma Center that enabled
Yeah.
so many to fight so well.
yeah.
I think it's important for me as a coach and to love them, to lead them well, is it took me so long to get over my anger and guilt. I didn't have an idol of grace that Dave wrote a book about. I had an idol of guilt that Bonhoeffer warned us about. And I didn't know I didn't realize how disabled I was until I began to love that disabled old Ted that I was.
Yeah.
So I think that's also what we're looking at in coaches, and that's the only way I could love my old self until I've accepted that forgiveness. You know, I think until you realize you're disabled, you
Yes.
can do nothing without me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
He tells me.
I've got a book.
And
I've
he's
got a
so
book
right.
in my
And I
Amazon cart called "Leading with a Limp."
Yes,
And,
exactly. It's the first book that came to my mind when you said
Have
that
you
about
seen it?
that.
Have you read it?
Yeah.
I need to get it.
When you're looking for people that are limping,
Yeah.
I'm not looking for people with skills. I'm
Yeah.
looking for that limp.
I'm gonna have to get that now because now it just triggered that. You're so right. Like when you learn how God can use you in spite of your weakness. I mean, we go right back to Moses, who we just read about,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
all the
Carrying
things
the
that
load.
disqualified him
Yeah.
actually is what God used to qualify him. So that's good. That's really good.
The load on me because Moses couldn't, and so Christ came. He bore the load,
Mhm.
and then we went to Elijah, and that's where he was
Yeah.
ascended to heaven. That's forever.
Mhm.
When yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Moses could not bear the load. Eternity past, no. The load of the sin is too great. In the eternity present Christ, it was placed in him, and we can rest.
Yeah.
And Elijah is the future. That's why those three were at the Transfiguration.
Yeah.
It makes sense because it wasn't until you know you're disabled and that Moses was deaf and God did bury him. It wasn't until you're disabled do you know that you have freedom to live and be enabled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's through Christ, only through Christ.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, that's so true.
All right, let's move on. It's important as a group coach that you remember that our group leaders have a strong desire for personal life-on-life connection with you. Now, some of them are not, I'm making this statement here, but understand that some of them, many of them I should say, are not conditioned for that yet. But what we want to build is uplines. We want to build connections to people to where when they put themselves out there to lead through a semester or to lead a community group that's ongoing through the year or whatever, they expect that, man, I'm going to hear from Josh, or I'm going to hear from Eric, and almost like if they don't hear from you, like what's wrong, like what's going on. And right now, I would say that most of our group leaders are more conditioned for feeling like they're on an island, and I certainly want to turn those tides a little bit.
Well, and Chris, real quick,
Mhm.
I think as men, it's even harder. Women are naturally talkative, they can just call them up, they'll talk to you. Men are just like, because when I was contacting leaders, you know, about half the time I would probably get a response. The other half the time it was like they either A, wouldn't respond, or thank you, click. You know what I mean? I gotta go real quick.
Yeah.
So as men, we are kind of taught that by society anyway, to be strong. If you're doing this and someone's coming into your life, you know you're not strong, you can't do it. With women, it's all about relations, and men are they're totally opposite. So I think as a group of men, that's even more of a challenge than it would be women, for sure. Yeah.
They don't want to be disabled.
Yeah.
They feel the same
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
Sometimes it
Seem
takes
disabled.
strength to keep my mouth shut and
Yeah.
listen to them complain about how disabled they are.
Yeah.
You gotta be a good listener.
You know, too.
Yeah.
It'd
Yeah.
be a good it takes strength sometimes to not talk, too.
Yeah, what's
Your
found
talking isn't what they want to hear sometimes, and you talk.
Yeah, one thing I found success with personally and leading people is starting off by listening, and not starting off of how do you need my help, but starting off of, hey, how can we learn from what you're doing? What's working for you right
Yeah.
now? You know,
Mhm.
and then it gets to start off positive. Then you kind of work into,
Exactly.
well, what do you need anything from me now? That kind of, you know.
Yeah, you get a positive. Yeah.
And as we get further on in the book, it's actually toward the end. There are some almost steps like what you're talking about, Josh, that you guys can some questions that you guys can ask that will directly, you know, reach out to them and let them know that you're with them. And we probably won't get to that point, but they're not blanks at the end of your book, and so you can certainly read through it and utilize that. But you know, as we move on in that paragraph, it says they need someone who is accessible and approachable. Our small group leaders need someone who is intimately acquainted with their lives. A recent study showed that small group leaders want shepherding first, teaching and training second, and leadership last. In a nutshell, as a leader of leaders, you need to earn the relational authority to disciple and lead your leaders. More simply put, love them, then lead them. Essentially, you are called to love other leaders. And so people long for leadership. Man, our nation, our world, our churches, we're desperate for strong leadership, and people will follow those that they trust. And how do you build trust? Trust, you know, just like with your kids, you know, how do you spell love? T-I-M-E. Like, we all know that, like, it's time. And so it's the same, like, people, grown adults that are group leaders are the same as our kids in some ways. Like, they just want time. And I don't want you guys to feel like either. I know we're setting ideals here, but I don't want you guys to feel overwhelmed. Eric probably has the best idea of what a group coach responsibility, like what it looks like over the course of months. And it's not, like, as we read through some of this, it's like, whoa, man, the bar is high. Like, this is, like, I want it to feel a little high, but I also don't want you to feel like if you don't get there, like, that you're a failure. But this is what we're striving for. And it's not going to be overwhelming. It's not going to be super time, it's not going to be a super time commitment. It'll be as much time as you can give it, and your schedule allows for it. And so, yeah, people are looking for leadership, and so here's some great questions to ask, and as you seek to know your leaders better. What's your love language? Where do you struggle? What would help you grow most? How can I best serve you and your family? And so those are some simple questions that you can ask when you're trying to build relationship with other leaders that maybe you don't know very well. Some of the people that you will be group coaches over or with, you certainly won't know them at all. And so that first conversation, you have to call up and introduce yourself and have to establish trust really from nothing. And so that just takes time. And one of the things that I told our group coaches the last several semesters, over the last year really, is that what I'll try to do is once I have group leaders assigned to you, I'll try to carry those over so you can establish ongoing relationships. Because a semester is 2 months, and you can call somebody up and cold call them and introduce yourself for the first time, and before you know it, man, like 2 months is over, and you're like, man, I barely got to know that individual, and I'm supposed to coach them and develop trust. And so I'll try to keep some continuity there to where you guys can build relationships over the course of semesters, multiple semesters. And so being a groups coach is an awesome responsibility. Few roles in the church provide servants with the opportunity to contribute to such a systematic, reproducing engine of growth that we call communities at Crossroads. Every leader influenced by a coach will in turn impact a small group. So man, I hope that that's going to be the case for you guys. As our leaders feel like they're loved, that they're not alone, that they're cared for, that they're being prayed for, that someone's checking in on them, that someone's even willing to give them direction where they may be directionless. What they're going to do is in turn, they're going to be like, man, Ted had some good advice. Like he just listened well, or man, he had some good thoughts on that. So they then in turn, they've seen good leadership, will hopefully say, I want to be like Ted, like I want to turn around and I want to replicate that. And so, I think, not to brag on certainly on myself or on Josh, but the example that I just wrote down here is like, I've informally been coaching Josh. We started a rooted group last semester. I invited Josh and his wife into it just because we'd started developing a friendship and everything. And he basically said, hey man, I'm willing to take this group and lead it. And so he kind of volunteered early on. The rest of the group kind of affirmed that Josh would be a qualified leader moving forward. And so in some ways, Josh and I have been working closely together on small group stuff. And we're to the point now where I have full confidence that Josh, first of all, because of his own leadership and because of his own study and his own drive and desire and experience in leadership, will do a great job, but also because I came alongside, kind of took him under my wing, so to speak, and gave him opportunities. And he had an opportunity to lead our group 2 or 3 times through the semester, and it was kind of a safe space for him to do that. And I have full confidence that he's going to take that group next semester, and he's going to do an amazing job with it. He's going to be a great leader, first of all, because he is a good leader, but also because he saw it modeled from me, who was kind of informally coaching him. So that's what I hope for our group leaders is that, man, as they see your guys' care and your investment, they're going to turn around and do the same thing. So let's look at the marks of effective coaching. The first one there, number 1 on page 7, is caring. Caring is that blank right there. Ted, would you mind reading that first paragraph that starts with Paul?
Paul portrays the standard of caring in Galatians 4:19. My little children, for whom I am again in the anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. Childbirth is the kind of pain that sets the ultimate standard for attention and intense focus. When Paul describes his longing to see believers grow to maturity, he compares it to labor pains. His concern for them is intense and unyielding. He desires their growth, such a mother desires to end the pain and bring new life into the world.
Yeah, you read through the epistles. You guys have all read through them. You read through the Ephesians, the Philippians, the Galatians, the Colossians, and you see a missionary who didn't have this mindset of, I'm just going to go plant a church and sayonara. Like he invested in these people, whether it was over the course of months or sometimes years. He invested in these churches, and even after he moved on, you can still see his heart and how big it was for these churches, especially when they were caught up in false teaching and caught up in sin, and they needed a little bit of rebuke or they needed a little bit of course correction. Paul didn't just say, okay, my work here is done, I'm moving on. Like, sometimes that's the danger of living in a hyper-paced society. Like, especially as men, we're so task-oriented that people become tasks. And therefore, it's like, okay, I can mark that off on my checklist. And every check means, man, I'm accomplishing something. And because we move so quickly in our world, sometimes we don't realize that we're leaving people behind and we're leaving care opportunities behind. And so sometimes that means we have to slow down a little bit and just walk with people. And that's not always an easy thing to do, but caring is going to be a big part of effective coaching. Being a small group coach is similar to shepherding. Shepherding involves that kind of caring. Good shepherds struggle to see people reach maturity. Likewise, a good coach exhibits strong, consistent affection for his or her small group leaders. Once again, this might take months and months, if not years. Developing people can be as long and painful as childbirth. Coaches, the ones who care, long to see Christ formed in the leaders and the groups that they shepherd. And I just think about just the practical, like shepherd. Like, what does a shepherd do?
I tell you what, he loves them while they're
I
growing
know,
wool.
right?
And it's slow.
Man, I'm telling you guys, if you,
love them while they grow wool.
if you, that's
Because
so
they
good.
just stand there and grow wool.
Have you
That's
ever
all the
read-
lambs do.
Have you ever
It's so
read A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23?
Yes.
Either you guys read it?
Yes.
Such a good book. The guy,
It's amazing.
Philip Keller, is a pastor, but he was also a shepherd in like Europe somewhere. I'm not sure which European country it was, but he writes on Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," and he breaks it down in ways that you and I as Westerners would never glean truth from it. But you're right, they just grow wool, and when they stray, they go back and they go after them. They chase them down. If they're rebellious, sometimes they use that staff. Sometimes they hook them. Sometimes they have to break their legs, and then they carry them. Like, it's crazy cool what a biblical shepherd does. And so sometimes, let's be honest, there are going to be those group leaders that you're like, man, I can't get them to respond to me. I can't get them to do what I'm advising them to do. I can't get them to just stop and listen. I can't get them to ask, whatever it might be. Man, sometimes it's just like, we just have to slow down and say, man, this one just needs a little extra love, a little extra attention. It's not always easy, but caring is a big part of what we're going to be doing. Let's skip that last paragraph there. Let's move on to the next page. On page 8, listening is obviously an effective tool. It's going to be an effective mark of being a good coach. Josh, do you want to read what's under listening right there?
Sure. Listening well is hard to do. The Bible exhorts, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak. To be a good coach, you must learn to be a good listener. Good listeners have a Philippians 2:4 mindset. They're more interested in others than themselves.
Yeah, good. The third one there is encouraging. You know, and then back to the listening, that's going to be hard for some of us as men. For some of the ladies on our team, it'll come a little bit more natural. We've talked about this a little bit already, but sometimes we just so badly want people to get the answers, and we have the answers. Have you ever felt like in your own life, you're like, man, I don't know what to do in this situation, but you insert that situation into somebody else's life, and you be like, I can diagnose it and I can fix it in like 30 seconds. But sometimes when it's our own problem, it's like, man, there's so many variables that I'm just kind of lost. And sometimes as group leaders, it's not always about saying I have the answer. Sometimes it's about, I just need to let this person speak.
I do that with my wife, because she'll say, I had answered to everything. And she'll say, just wanted you to listen. I don't need an answer. And I'm like, biting my tongue, I just like, got it fixed here. So yeah, you're so right. You're so right. Yeah.
So develop that skill, as hard as it might be for some of us to just listen well. And I'll be the first to admit that that's not always the easiest thing for me either. The third thing is encouraging. To truly be effective coaches of small group leaders, you must become an encouragement maniac. Please hear me. Few people receive the encouragement they need. Walk into work on a Monday morning, and likely you will not hear your coworkers say that they sat all weekend in sackcloth and ashes because they missed you and value your fine contributions. Nobody's sitting around singing most of our praises, right? And so most of us don't understand the value that we have. And every once in a while, when those praises come along, and whether it's in the form of a word or a note or a raise or whatever it might be, man, it means a ton to us. Even as men, it means a lot. And so how much encouragement starved are our leaders that go to work every day just like you guys do, and they don't know what their value is. Encouragement from a coach is like a shot of adrenaline. Jesus understood the importance of encouragement. That was the purpose of John 14 through 16. Faced with the reality of his departure, he spoke words of truth and life. He reminded them of his mission, assured them of his presence, and gave them an eternal perspective on their grief, and promised them a fruitful ministry. Then he prayed for them. So Jesus, obviously, he selects 12 different men that in some ways are all outcasts in society, and he just speaks into their lives and he encourages them. He paints the picture of their potential, and he kind of tells them what they could be and what they could accomplish. You guys ever had somebody in your life? You guys ever had somebody in your life that just said a word that changed you, like inspired you to be something you never thought you could be, that believed in you? If you got that person, man, just share it. I'd love to hear a brief story of like, or illustration of like, who was that person, or have you had that person in your life? And I'll start just while you guys were thinking. My very first pastor that hired me, I was 21, and I hadn't even finished Bible college yet. He called me up and he wanted to hire me as a youth pastor. And I didn't even know him. He was my wife's youth pastor when she was in high school. And he was looking for somebody up in Boise, Idaho. And I spent 1 hour with that dude, and I'm like, this guy is magnetic. He was motivating. Every time I left after hanging out with him or talking with him, I just felt better about myself. And he was 32 years old at the time. Like, he was a kid by some standards, you know, and he was pastoring his first church. But man, he just discipled me for a year. I mean, unfortunately, he ended up in divorce. His marriage fell apart. I mean, it's not funny. It's actually really sad. But man, I followed him and shadowed him for my very first year in ministry, and I learned about people. And I learned how to, in some ways, come out of my shell, because I'm not a people person by nature. But whatever I am today is in large part because of his influence. We would go to McDonald's, and I would just watch him just win people over just like that, because he was always positive and encouraging. And so I learned so many things from just watching him do life. And that was, it changed my ministry forever. And I'm so grateful that happened early on, because I tend to be a little bit more introverted than most people even know. But I forced it out, and it's become more natural because I watched his example. So, and he instilled like that courage in me to be more of a people person. How about you guys? Who inspired you? Who changed you? Who spoke a word into your life that just changed your course? Anybody?
Yeah, I have several, but
Give me
but
the
I'll
one.
you
Give me the one.
I'll just narrow down. My chaplain, probably when I was in Iraq for a year and a half. He just really mentored me the year I was there, and just helped me get on track to my rebirth, even though I wasn't born again at that time. At least I thought I did. I walked around calling myself a Christian. I wore dog tags that said Christian for 25 years. Nobody would ever tell me I wasn't a Christian. I was grew up in America. I'm a Christian. Our Constitution was founded on Christianity, for goodness sakes. But I think that I really wasn't a follower of Christ. But he was very helpful. My chaplain was just there to answer my questions, just listening, and instilled courage to face my fears.
Yeah.
You know, he instilled courage to face my fears for sure, and
Those-
suffered with me.
Yeah.
But then a lot of books have been very helpful. This Spurgeon book, you know, this guy named Brendan Manning.
Yeah.
I love the book he wrote. Helped me so much. Though I wish I could hug that guy for his work, because his work.
He's a Catholic priest, right?
Yeah,
Right?
but some of his books are
Oh,
just
yeah.
incredible, very helpful to me. The analogy he gave with when I didn't struggle with the book Dave wrote. Again, I mentioned the idol of grace. I had the idol of guilt. Like, I had a lot of guilt and shame for my past. It was the other spectrum. It wasn't an idol of grace, an idol of guilt. Of that old self, I hated the way I hated me terribly. And it wasn't until he had this analogy, it didn't go like this exactly. This is the way I interpreted it. Judas struggled with that. Judas hated himself so bad that he hung himself.
Yeah.
But Peter really was upset with himself too for
Sure.
denying Christ 3 times. But Peter befriended his old self after the cross. Peter loved and became friends with the old self, that he hated what Peter did, but he loved the sinner. Peter loved the old self. And Brennan Manning, the ability to get, that gave me so much courage.
That's great.
To face my old self, and to not only not to face my old self and stop condemning my sins and my past self, but to love that old self, to love Ted. My new Ted loves my old Ted. This is a huge process in my development as a Christian. I think it's when I went from being a child of God to a son of God.
Yeah.
Like Worsby says in the book of Galatians. I truly believe there was a transition there that Brendan Manning helped me
That's great.
with befriending and loving my old self.
That's good.
Not forgiving myself,
Right.
because I don't believe in self-forgiveness. That's never taught from what I see in the Bible. I don't forgive myself by no means, but I accept Christ's forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I love the old self. And Brendan Manning helped me with that. And that gave me incredible courage to even speak right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we got some readers. We got some readers in this room. I don't know if that's the draw of everybody, but I know if you guys can't think of, I appreciate you saying, Ted, that it was one of yours was an author. Like if you can't think of that person that has influenced you through their discipleship, their personal relationship with you, who was the author that's influenced you or encouraged you?
I think mine would be R.C. Sproul.
Oh,
Yeah, R.C. Sproul. I'll tell you, the guy's written over 100 books. Just an amazing theologian that can make this difficult stuff just come alive. And just break it down to where I can understand it, which is on a pretty low level. Trust me. I listen to him every day. I read his stuff all the time. I mean, R.C. Sproul, MacArthur's sometimes can be a little deep for me. Steve Lawson. Steve Lawson is when I was beginning ministry, became a lay pastor, Crossroads paid for Ligonier, and that was one of the things, the 5 solas they put you through and everything. And I'll tell you, the base and the foundation was laid upon everything at that point in the Reform movement, and here again it makes it come alive. So I think it would be R.C. Sproul, Steve Lawson. I tried reading some of I think it was Calvin. Calvin's Institutes, or it was like, wow. So my mind was smoking after about 10 minutes, and I'm like, yeah.
Mine's my dad. I'm a big reader as well, but he keeps it ingrained in my head that the best author of life is God. And to keep the Bible first and foremost. The other books I do learn a lot from. R.C. Sproul's great, like several of them. But he is just like spoken to me so much, and it's more like a culture style living we're not used to. It's by being a doer. It's been informative, but he showed me by the way he lives. And I just seen everything he did as a kid. He's always been the outcast, and his mission in life is not himself. He's the most selfless man I've ever met in my life. And he made me realize, to your point, you have to love yourself and you have to forgive yourself. That's very important. But self is definitely not the reason you're here.
Yeah.
You are here to reach others and impact other people. You do that best by your actions. Your words are great, teach them, but they're going to watch every move you make. And it's true that an action is worth more than 1,000 words. So that really stuck with me, and it took me a long time to realize that, because I was more like I was in it, to be honest, selfishly, selfish, you know what I'm trying to say.
Selfishly.
Yeah. And then as I grow and matured, and it's really like how you said it, Ted, when I went from being a child of God to more of a son of God, and another level of spiritual maturity in my life, it really just hit me hard of like, it's about you and everybody, believers and non-believers. We're stronger together. And that's where and then that's how my heart got so big into just discipleship is I want to reach other people. And it's all from my dad, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a legacy.
Just to back up, how I got interested in Brennan Manning was in a book by Chuck Swindoll. Because I always look at the bibliography and where did he get that idea from? And I kept digging, and so it was actually, he referenced Brennan Manning in a book written on Jesus, the greatest life of all, and that was in that book that that Brennan Manning was referenced, and then that's when I was
Chuck
digging
Swindoll.
from Chuck's work.
He was so, I know you and I have talked about Chuck Swindoll. He was so influential in my early ministry. I just loved his stuff. I loved his preaching. If you guys have never listened to him, very Baptist style of preacher, but man, he's just got the voice.
His laughter is amazing.
So good. Josh, you got anybody over there on your end of
You
the
know,
table?
I've been thinking, and like, it's honestly, I mean, people, have certainly been influenced, a great deal by, various professors and whatnot, but when I think more along the lines of like, an encouragement, and actually I would say probably a former pastor here, Darren Dyer, was very influential in my, going through the house church pastor training, and I was 22, 23, and he really took me under his wing. I mean, he was over the whole thing, so everyone was under his wing, but especially me, he was very encouraging. He was just an encourager is his gift, and I'm usually on the self-deprecating end, so he's always going against that. And we went to seminary together, so I would say him.
Okay.
But I always struggled to really believe him because of my own insecurities, so it wasn't like, man, I just felt so much better. I was more like, always like, yeah, but if he only knew, but still, I think a lot of that stuck with me, and he still reached it. We still get together from time to time, and so
That's cool.
that's it.
That's good.
Darren's a good guy.
I just want to mention one last thing.
Sure.
I think the reason why I'm sitting at this table with you guys right now, the whole reason I became a Christian is because it was humanity that really encouraged me. I mean, when I really think about it, I was at 9/11 happened. I was on the ICU ward in San Antonio, Texas, at the Army Birth Center. Okay, and these guys started rolling in. They were keeping everybody alive. We had a huge survivability problem. At least that's their side. So they've up to 96, 97% survivability right now. They don't get a shot in the head and a shot in the heart. 80, 90% burn, we're staying alive. And I was scared as a burn therapist, as a chief of rehab, and watching these guys recover, I was scared. Beginning of the war, I would look at the trauma surgeon and I'm like, you guys are really going to keep this guy alive. I was very fearful. The most fearful I've ever been in my life was taking care of these soldiers because they were coming in and I could not believe it. I was like, Eric, you serious? You guys are going to keep this guy alive? I was nervous. I was just like I am right now, very, very shook. Like, you guys are going to keep this guy alive, aren't you? He's freaking gonna live, dude. I'm like, and I was praying, God, no, please don't give me somebody with no hands and no eyes. No hands and no eyes. I don't know what I can handle anything but no. I got to that point. If I can just have nobody, and he did answer that prayer. I had two guys, one guy with no hands, missing one eye, he still had the other eye. Why you need eyes? Because you can't run your prosthetics without eyes. You have to be able to see them because you can't feel. Okay, so if not, they'd have to split the radius and on and make chopsticks. Okay, in some countries that can't have prosthetics. So I did not want somebody with no eyes and no hands because they couldn't run their prosthetics. I had two guys that came close. One of them had no thumb and all the fingers missing. He was missing the other hand. We were doing a toe to hand transplant so he could pinch again. Wow. But he was still missing an eye. The other guy missing both hands, but he had one eye. They came close. My point is this: is that what instilled me is that they kept him alive, and then they did great.
Yeah.
They did incredible. So within a year of the war, I was looking at Eric going, keep him alive, man. Keep him alive. They're going to be fine. Are you sure, Ted?
Yeah.
Because I went into one room and the parents wanted me to talk to this young man. And they wanted me to talk to him and said, should we pull the plug or not? He did a bilateral shoulder dislocated. Early in the war, I said, he's going to need help the rest of his life. He's going to need a helper the rest of his life. This is pre-Christian. This is before I was a Christian. But I said, he's going to need help, and they pulled the plug on him. I have guilt to this day that they pulled the plug on him. Because if I would have been a year later, I would have said, keep him alive.
Yeah.
Just let him live. He'll be fine. We'll love him. We'll love him. We'll love him. We'll take care of him. We'll take care of him. I would have sung a different tune than I did when the chief of rehab, when the burn surgeon, when the burn director came and said, Ted, you need to go talk to this family. What I said to them, I regret to this day. But because these soldiers gave me the courage Ty Ziegel and Dusty Hill, these guys are incredible. They found a new way forward. They could never go back to repelling out of the helicopter. They could never go back to Woodlife. You can't even tell what they used to look like, for goodness sakes.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
But that gave me the courage to find out what it meant to grow after trauma, post-traumatic growth that you hear me talk about sometimes. I've been around. We see post-traumatic growth in breast cancer, so all of them. Humanity teaches us that you can overcome and grow from anything, and that we should face those fears together by simply what you said earlier, is you love them. They'll listen if you care.
Yeah. Yep.
But they won't listen if they don't.
Yep.
It's
true.
And it's true. And so that humanity taught me that God taught us through humanity, just seeing them. Oh my gosh, they do great. I was wrong. There's no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder. There's post-traumatic stress order and growth if we just love them. But there's only about 15% have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's it. The rest of the 70, 80, 90% have post-traumatic growth. If that doesn't inspire you and give you courage.
As I kind of relate that, as I kind of relate that to what we're talking about here, and I know you've related a little bit, but I think about it from the standpoint of you've seen people at their worst physically, and you've seen them recover. And so as leaders spiritually, we're going to encounter people, maybe not many of our small group leaders or community group leaders, but within our groups, we will encounter people that are broken, man, and they think that there's no hope. And I had people in my Wednesday night Rudy group this last semester that came in and were immediately apologetic because of the cigarette smell, or because of the language, or because of this or that, and clearly they didn't have their life together and they knew it. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, I'm not here to judge you. Like, you signed up for this class, and I'm gonna do my best to love you through this. And so sometimes when you've seen rock bottom, you have more grace to extend, you know? And that's good, man.
And so what is your love language? We need to make sure that we are all, as coaches, we understand co-suffering love. You know what I mean? That you grab that hand, that man that smell like marijuana.
Yeah. And it's not easy to
Because
do.
that's what Paul did.
Yeah.
What, you know, like they asked Benjamin Franklin, do you want to go, where do you want to live? Wherever there's liberty, that's where my country is. But Paine didn't. Paine was like Paul. Wherever there's not liberty, that's where I go.
Yeah.
That's what Paul says. Wherever there's not freedom, I go, like Paine said. Not where there's freedom, that's where I live. There's freedom here amongst you men. But that's ain't where we belong. What you did with that young man is wonderful. Because he was lost.
Yeah.
Jesus ate with sinners for a reason.
Yeah, he hung out with sinners for a reason. Not the good ones, yeah.
Well, let's keep
Sorry,
moving.
I'm sorry
No,
to
that's
take
good.
you off topic.
Ted's you're a well, man. You're just like.
You're not gonna be able to go to sleep tonight.
Oh, 3 o'clock, I'll be asleep by afternoon nap.
Ted's gonna text all of us. Hey, I just gotta say one more thing.
Yeah.
I'll be asleep for an hour.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at number 4, which is praying, and we're gonna end on the next. You're fine. We're gonna end on the next page, but I wanted to get through these next couple of points. Obviously, we want to be praying for people. Right there in the middle of that paragraph, it says an average coach armed with prayer is worth more than an army of cheerleaders without it. Which I love, because we talked about the encouraging part. We talked about sometimes you got to be rah-rah. And sometimes you got to talk people up, and you got to inspire and motivate them. And sometimes that's not what people need. What they really need is just for you to fall on your knees and just pray for them. And once again, I'm trying to be transparent with you guys. Like, this is one of the hardest things for me. And you would think as a pastor that, you know, I would spend 20 hours of my day at work praying for people. You know, I know Josh does, but you know.
Yeah, what's wrong with you, Chris?
Judgment.
Yeah.
Aren't I supposed to judge those within the church? Here we go.
Yeah.
Just not the outsiders,
Yeah.
the insiders. Yeah, I mean, that's just something that I struggle with, is just like slowing down, because I'm so task oriented, and I just want to accomplish and move from one thing, or survive one thing and move to the next, that sometimes I just don't slow down to pray. In fact, it's funny that we're talking about this, because I actually sent myself an email. You guys ever send yourself emails?
Yep.
I do that all the
I
time.
send myself text messages.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling a little bored, I feel
Yeah.
Feel so much better now.
Ignore.
When I find a good resource,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll text it to myself. Just so I have it.
Sorry.
Yep.
Josh gets a text every other day. You're good enough.
Yeah.
You're smart enough.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Josh.
You guys remember that Saturday Night Live skit?
No.
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 Oh,
Oh, you made it up.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys have to go look that up. Stuart Smalley, Saturday Night Live. He had a bit with Michael Jordan, and it was like a self-help, like confidence. Like Michael Jordan was discouraged, and he told Michael Jordan, like, look in the mirror and you say to yourself, you're good enough. Like, he's the greatest basketball player.
Yeah.
You're good enough. You're smart enough. And you see Michael Jordan doing this. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's from like 1992. But, anyways, I don't even remember where I was going with
Prayer.
that.
You
I
email
sent
yourself.
myself an email. I sent myself an email last night reminding me I need to talk to the youth staff as we're building this team, that we need to pray more. Like, I had to send myself that reminder, because we get so into our conversations, so into what is like that next activity in front of us, or what are we doing this weekend, that it's like, we need to stop and just slow down and pray for the Chapman boys, or pray for, Isaiah, or pray for my kids, or pray for, like, we need to just slow down and pray. And everything else that we're doing is important, but if it's not first bathed in prayer, we're doing it mostly in our own strength and our own power. And the reality is it's scary. Once again, I trust you guys. Like, it's scary to me how much ministry I've done in my own strength. And what could it be if I just prayed more? So, prayer is obviously going to be a big part. Number 5 is reproducing. A shepherd's supreme mark is reproducing. Coaches who focus more on strategies, numbers, and structures than on spiritually developing their leaders will drift off course. The whole point of coaches caring, listening, encouraging, and praying is so that Christ will be reproduced in them. Coaches should develop other coaches. Look for leaders who intend to attract and stimulate maturity in others, and other leaders, and you have a coach in the making. 2 Timothy 2:2 is all about Paul challenging Timothy about the importance of the legacy of a leader. So pretending you're holding a baton, who will you pass it off to? And, I said this earlier, all of you guys are here because we've had a conversation. Whether you volunteered and we had a conversation, whether I sat down at lunch with you, whether we talked in the lobby or in my office, we all had a conversation, and I saw something in each of you that said, man, they could contribute to this ministry in a very powerful and unique way. And so, as a leader, I've identified you. I'm trying to reproduce myself to some degree, and just minister more effectively to leaders. And here's the thing: is like I'm going to have my own group of leaders that I'm coaching as well as you guys. But my ministry is going to be just as much to you as it is to them. Like I want to hopefully lead you guys well, and equip you well, so that you feel like, man, when I'm in the thick of it, when I'm in the trenches, that I have a support system as I'm supporting other people. And so I want you guys to know that there is something in each of you that God wants to use for important spiritual ministry. Because I do not look at these positions or these group coaches roles as just fillers. Like they're not just something that, well, I just need to take some load off of my plate. And like what we're doing is actually really important stuff. And I think that the deeper you guys invest in this, some of you it'll be okay for you, and some of you, maybe it won't be a fit in a year or less. And for some of you, it's gonna be like, dang, I've found my niche, and I think that I'm onto something. God's showing me something through this, and you're gonna really blossom through this. And so, I would love to see you guys be reproducing yourselves. I would love to see all of you starting your own groups if you're not leading one. I certainly wouldn't sit here and say you need to lead a group every semester, but if you have the capability throughout 2021 at some point to lead a group, that's a way of replicating. Like, I was blessed enough, and Josh can speak to this, but I handpicked my rooted group. Like, I basically invited 4 other couples into it, and I don't know if I was just really good or really lucky, but dude,
Really?
really, like, dude, it fired quick, didn't it? Like, it just started firing fast, and I was shocked at how quickly the group gelled, and all of a sudden I see, like, Josh identifies himself super fast, and I know that there's at least, well, besides me, there's every one of the guys in our group
I
can
would
be a
say
leader.
everyone. Yeah.
No doubt.
For sure.
And so
and the women.
Yes.
There's a couple.
there's
for
spiritual
sure.
leaders
Yeah,
there too.
yeah.
Mhm. So, you know, that's a I guess a testimony in some ways of a guy like me knowing a little bit, but also getting a little bit lucky and, you know, striking gold there at that first small group that he starts. But man, that's replication. Like, I can't wait to see what happens with that rooted group in 2 years, because I set the standard early, not only to replace myself, but to let the group know this group needs to expand and you need to, like, be branching off. And so I have no doubt that in a couple of years that group will turn into 2, maybe 3 groups. And so, but that's the reproducing part, that when you lead a group, it became much easier for me to start identifying other leaders, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to try to find somebody when I'm mingling, you know, in the lobby or talking to people after church or in some small group that maybe I'm a part of. And certainly if you're in a small group, that's great. But I think that if you're looking to reproduce and identify other leaders, it's going to be maybe easier to do when you're leading other people. And so, man, I'd encourage you guys to all lead a group at some point this year, if you can, to help in that reproduction portion. So,
Because I know we're about halfway through, but I know for me personally, if we had a couple extra minutes, and I don't know if you're planning on finishing it at some point in time, but if we go through all the fill-ins just to have them.
yeah.
So I mean, we can read the material, and I know we won't get the discussion
It'll bug me for
until the next time, but it's like, I'd like to know what questions to ask.
You can
I'd
just
like to
guess.
know-
I got you can make up your own answers.
I would bet you, I would love to give you guys 30 minutes to just read through this and everybody come up with their best guesses for these answers.
It might be scary. I don't know. That's it.
I'm guessing, like, on page 14, if you actually read through this, you'd be like, oh, C is care. You know,
Care,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I can do that.
Observe.
Just, yeah. Yes?
Affirmation.
Nope.
Appreciation. Appreciation.
Yes.
Appreciation. I'm not writing these down.
I am as you do. A was appreciation. Right?
Yeah, appreciate.
Is the other one chemistry? I see the second law of thermodynamics here.
Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong page.
Which page?
Each one through coach, right?
No,
Yeah.
challenge.
C
the
is
C.
care. O
Care.
is reserve.
Reserve.
A is appreciation. Care.
Challenge is the bottom of
Challenge.
16.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So at some point, I'll give you these blanks, but at some point we'll circle back, because I
Yeah.
think there's value in talking through this and not just filling in the blanks. Help is the
H
one on
help,
page
yeah.
17.
And then what are the 4 questions? The 4 good questions to be asking on page 12.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what is the best thing that happens? Best thing?
Boom. You can guess the next one then, Eric.
Oh gosh.
If that was the best thing, what's the next one?
I don't know. I'm lost.
What was one?
Oh, I'm on
Number
page
two on page
12.
Yeah, what's
Question.
number 1 on page 12?
What is the best thing that happened
Oh, okay.
in your group?
Which means if we're playing opposites, number 2 is what's the worst thing? And then number 3 is what are you going to do next?
You didn't let us guess.
Oh, sorry. That would have been the hard one to figure out.
Yeah, it would have.
Because number 4 is what?
How can I pray for you?
There you go.
I like this game.
You get another free meal.
Yeah,
You won.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and take my card.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Monopoly money if you want to try
You
it.
kind of make a fool of yourself, you know, you go in there.
Like a nice steak dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, sir. Decline.
We
My
want your
company went-
personal card.
My
you
company,
don't
when our
want
credit
your
card
church.
don't work, the first thing I do is make sure the name tags go outside the office door.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, you guys. So let's close in a word of prayer. It's 2:02. I want to respect your time as much as possible. Man, 2 hours. That's a lot. So thank you so much. Good conversation. Good feedback. Hopefully, it's good help. And just so you guys know, over the next week, as we get closer to this semester launch, like all of our groups are established, obviously. I would advise you guys to grab one of those catalogs if you haven't already. Start looking through them. If you're not in a group, try to get into one. If you are in a group, and just start praying over the catalog. Start praying for different group leaders, even if you aren't assigned to them yet. But I'm going to give you guys, Eric knows what they look like. It's kind of just a really simple spreadsheet where I'll give you guys probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 11, maybe 12 small group leaders to oversee. Josh will oversee all of the young adult ministry ones. That's a given. It's an obvious thing. So, but I'll give you guys some leaders to be reporting to and assisting. And I would encourage you guys as soon as possible to start reaching out to them. Just say, hey, just want to let you know that I'm going to be your group coach this semester. I want to introduce myself. You can text it. I would obviously encourage a phone call. A phone call is always better, but we all know that everybody screens their calls. So leave a voicemail if they don't pick up the phone. But I'll give you guys those assignments probably next week, maybe as soon as Friday. And then, I'll keep in contact with you like, hey, this is what's going on. The other thing I was going to let you know is that our group leader training, we have 2 of them. One next Wednesday at 7, and then one on Thursday. They'll both be here at Park Avenue. On Thursday we have one at 9 from 9 to 10:30. And so if you guys can make either of those, that would be fantastic. I'd love to introduce you. Don't feel obligated. But if you're there, I'd love to introduce you as one of our
You
coaches.
said next Wednesday at 7.
Wednesday at 7.
Did you send them the doodle thing?
Yeah, I got it.
I don't know that you guys got it.
No.
Because
I'm not
you
leading
guys
the
got
group,
it because you're both leading groups.
Yeah.
But
He left us out. He's like,
Dang it. 7 to 8:30 on Wednesday, and then the Thursday one is 9 to 10:30 in the morning. So yeah, no pressure. I know it's a little bit last minute for a couple of you, but if you can make it, you don't even have to stay for the whole thing. If you just wanted to come at the beginning or something, I can introduce you and just say, hey, this is one of the coaches. If you have any questions, or maybe Ted or Eric or Josh might be reaching out to you. So don't be surprised. Now you have a face with a name.
it's a good refresher for me. I'll take it.
So, anyways, all right, you guys, let's pray, and I'll get you out of here. God, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the people that you have equipped to do the work of ministry. I'm grateful for the part that I get to play in helping to equip them, Lord. And so I pray, Lord, that as we really walk into spiritual leadership and responsibility, that first of all, we would carry the weight of responsibility with that, like we would understand it, but that we would also understand that you're doing the work. You're doing it through us, and trust you to bring the power. And so, Father, I'm grateful for communities. I'm grateful for what they accomplish. Just like Ted said, man, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in what communities accomplish. And I'm passionate about it. I know these guys are all passionate about it as well. So I'm grateful for us crossing paths. I'm grateful for their willingness to say yes and put their yes on the table to serve you. I pray that they would be blessed through this ministry season, that they would feel rewarded, that they would feel like they're contributing and making a difference in the lives of leaders. And so just watch over these leaders, these group coaches, as they begin their ministries this semester. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Oh.
Man, this is fun. I texted my wife
See you
this
guys
morning.
next
She's
week.
like, I'm praying for your meeting as if I was really nervous. And I'm like, dude, these are my guys. Like, this is going to be easy.
No, this is good. Are you guys all done?
Yeah.
Ready to take it home?
Hey, I wanted to tell you something real quick. Nick, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but Nick applied for a fast track seminary.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
what Tammy put on Facebook.
Yeah,
yesterday.
he got accepted.
That's
So,
fantastic.
Yeah, he'll be able to have his master's in like 4.5 years because he had a bunch of credits from high school too.
Okay,
for the core
that's how he's
classes.
doing it so fast.
So
Okay.
yeah, he had a bunch of so yeah, he's real excited. I said, get ready for some serious work. So,
Does that mean
yeah.
any summer classes for him? Or?
I think he has to take one, maybe, and he can take it online, so he doesn't have to be on campus down there. But the other 2 semesters he'll be on campus down there. So yeah, he's really excited about that. I'm telling you, we kind of encouraged him to take that because it's like if you can get your master's, the younger the better. And I know even talking to you, you said you would have done some things different, and I'm like, even younger the better. So yeah,
That's awesome.
so hopefully he'll
Should be
have
a
his,
proud dad, man.
yeah, he'll have his master's when he's 23, hopefully somewhere around there. So
It's incredible.
You guys
Yeah.
uncovered my secret here. One of the things I was going to talk about, we didn't get to it, is talking about when you're following up with group leaders is actually listening well, but taking notes. You know, like writing down, this is how I can pray for this person. So we've got these, and I actually ripped them off, and I'll pay for them.
sure you will.
I'll pay for,
Yeah.
for it with my debit card, my church debit card.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give one of these. This is kind of like a little appreciation to each of you guys for
Thank
your investment.
Oh,
So
thank
use these
you.
notebooks as kind of a journal, if you will, as you're coaching people. Use this just for coaching, to write people's names down, write prayers down for them, correspondence, whatever it might be. Put those to good use, and don't just draw cartoons in them.
Yeah.
Whoa. Maybe that's okay.
Now you're gonna go out through
There
the
are a
door.
lot of
Now you're
pages
gonna go out through the door and have a security tag in them, and it's gonna go off. The security tag's gonna go off as we walk through the door. And it's like, Chris told us where to
Doodle
go.
while you're
Yeah,
listening.
yeah.
Doodle while you're listening to your group.
Yeah.
Yeah, suck it up.
You can draw a picture about what you're talking about. Yeah, you probably could.
You'll have a playbook in there. What's your problem?
Yeah.
It says, you just gotta
Here's your
man up a
plate.
little bit.
Yeah.
Put your little corner out.
All right, appreciate you guys, man. I'm looking forward to working with you guys long term.
Did
If anybody wants to take the chips and queso, feel free to. Nobody double dipped from what I can tell.
Yeah, look, he's that's going. I guess no one wants him now.
I do it at home. Maybe
Sure.
I did, and that's why nobody else had them.
Yeah.
Carry it back, bud. So what?
You need to stay on?
Okay, I got it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to carry this thing on out.
How many?
All right.
Not even shipped or
That.
Good seeing you, gentlemen.
This was fun. You guys are easy. Appreciate
Alright.
it.
Seriously, no one's
See you,
no one's
y'all.
taking this?
You are.
After you get put after the back, you can have those.
You can have, yeah.
So it's more like called the motivation guide. So when you're on whole 30 and whatnot, like they're usually not long-term guides in themselves, but it's help get you out of the bare essentials then after that, then you start maybe adding one thing in, and then that way, then if you add that in, you start feeling that way, you know, okay, we have lactose intolerance, or so we just do it because with the reset, just said, okay, we take out all the bad stuff we know it's working in the past, and then yeah, I mean, last year this is probably about July or August, I was down to about 170 pounds. I hadn't been down 170 pounds since I was a sophomore in high school. Like, so I wasn't working out, but was literally just dieting from January to July, August of doing that constellation thing. So it definitely works for us. Now I think once it is into Christmas, everything is definitely not 170 right? Not even close, but yeah, so it's just one of those of trying to not cheat. So yeah, and it's a lot more tempting here. There's a lot more opportunity to